This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, guys. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. As I'm situating on my yoga ball, which I would not say during a normal Tuesday episode, but these are the bonus episodes, and I feel like I can say whatever I want. I can say whatever I want all the time, but I'm a broken record. So I'll say it again. I'm trying to take the Tuesday episodes much more seriously. The true crime. And today I'm going to do a bonus episode and do the true crime headlines again. I got a little bit of feedback from people saying that they really liked the format and they kind of liked the shorter snippet of crime, and just as long as I make sure to follow up on them, because some of them are, not concluded, which I will. Any of the ones that I talk about that aren't concluded, like every month, every 5, 6 weeks, I'll try and do a follow up if there is any more information, any additional information. So the three that I have today, honestly, are so good. I almost wish that I was doing them as standalone episodes, but they do not take place in the Southwest. Which I was going to say, at some point, I wonder if I keep doing this podcast for a while, will there come a time when like there are no more murders to cover or missing people to cover in the Southwest? No, that's not going to happen. I feel like I have not talked about, because I'm on Tuesdays just like getting right into the true crime, and I haven't had any guest hosts on, and I haven't done any just like chit chat bonus episodes. I feel like I haven't shared anything going on in my life lately, but there isn't much, to be honest. I don't think you guys are missing out on anything, because I know everyone's like, what's happening in her life? We're dying to know. Nothing. Except for the Melvins in the backyard. That's not my biggest stress in life right now, but that is stressing me out, that I don't know that I created this terrible problem for myself out of a good place. Mark is a smoker, and so whenever he was here and we'd sit outside in the backyard at night, we could hear things moving around in the oleander tree. And I was always like, what is it? It sounds so big. It's like some type of big creature. And we never knew, and I never thought much of it. Like, it's just like mice or something is what we figured. And then I don't know, one day I must have seen one of them or something, and I was like, oh, it's so cute. And so when I had some bread that was about to go bad, I threw it over the bird sanctuary fence, because remember, we put up a fence around the oleander tree before because so many birds were hanging out in there, and I was scared that they would have babies and the babies would fall out of the tree and the dogs would eat the babies. So we put up a fence around that corner of the yard to basically protect the oleander tree, and I called it a bird sanctuary. Well, now it is like a rat village, and I love rats and mice, so I have no problem with it, except for the fact that, well, lots of things. Rats and mice carry disease. Their poop, if you breathe in the fumes of their poop, that can cause disease. They can bring other predators around, like snakes and stuff, can be drawn to the backyard, which I definitely don't want. And they venture out of the bird sanctuary and into the yard. And Indiana has killed one, and two of them drowned in the baby pool one night, which I was devastated by and like ready to take myself to jail because I'm a murderer for leaving the baby pool filled with water out. That was foolish. And so in the beginning, anyways, it was like I had some like bread that was about to go bad. And I was like, well, instead of wasting it, I'll just throw it over into the bird sanctuary and the melt and At first we thought it was one rat, and so I named him Melvin. And then I was like, oh, I think there's more than one. And then we would hear them like fighting. And so now they're all Melvin. So they're just the Melvins. And and so that's how it started. It started just like I didn't want to waste food. And I was like, oh, they'll appreciate a little snack or something. And then it just, every few days I'd like have some leftover pasta or I don't know, whatever I had left over, except for meat. I would never put meat over there. I don't even know if rats eat meat. I guess they do, but gross. I don't want to do that. So any vegetables or bread products that were going to go bad or that I didn't finish or something like that, I would just throw over the fence for the Melvins. And then I started, like one night I was sitting there and I saw them like come out and like grab a piece of the food and drag it back into the oleander tree. And I fell in love with all of the Melvins. And so then I ordered a little shallow water dish. This is all I've told this story on Patreon, so I'm sorry to my patrons who have heard all of this. They've been involved in the saga the whole time. And so we bought a little like shallow water dish to put in there that I fill up with water every day. And, it was just cute. And then my first concern was that the dogs are going to get the rats and kill them. And that would make me sad, which has happened once. Uh, and then I don't remember. Oh, it was my dad. It was my dad. Yeah. I wish I could find that text to read to you. But I sent my dad a video of them eating, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're so cute. Because I had recently told him about these rats in the yard. And so I sent him this video, and I was like, look, you can see him go grab this celery. Isn't this so cute? And he said, yeah. And then he sent this. This is his text message. Mice and rats carry disease. Feeding them will attract more rats and more mice and more disease. You will be infested with rats and mice, and snakes may follow. If your neighbors learn about what you're doing, they may report you and try to get you to stop or may file a complaint against you. I do not wish to discuss it any further. It's up to you. Do what you want and deal with the consequences of your decision. Now, if you knew my dad, that's a very John text. No warm and fuzzies there. That is just to the point. And I was annoyed when I got it at first, and so I didn't really respond to it. And then, as always, it turns out that he's right because it got me thinking. I started doing a little research. Sorry, guys, this went off you know, I was going to jump right in, but here we go. I'm not. I'm going to tell you this story. So, got that text. It kind of inspired me to do some research. So, I did and came to understand that. I mean, I already knew that rats and mice kind of like reproduce really quickly and they just like there's a ton of them all of a sudden. But my research confirmed, and then all of the disease stuff confirmed, can attract predators to the yard, confirmed. Um, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll just stop. But then I researched that and realized no, for a few reasons. If I just completely stop cold turkey, first of all, then they go over to eat the garden, which is a very long trip from the oleander tree. It's like at least, I don't know, 100 feet trek across the yard. And, if they are stupid enough to do that when the dogs are out, then we'll have dead Melvins. Uh, so eating the garden was one, but at this point, like whatever, it's about to be 600 degrees here. My garden's probably not going to survive. So eat the garden, fine. But then I found out that like if they're like nesters and they become very comfortable and they like to stay where they're comfortable, don't we all? And so if I just completely stop feeding them and watering them, some of them might die because they will just be waiting for it. Now, apparently they're very resourceful and they'll probably move along and find a different place to live with food and water, but they might not and they might just die. And that destroys me because it's my fault. I created this. I was providing them with food and water. Of course, they want to hang out and stay here in this beautiful oleander tree. And so now I'm just going to stop feeding them and they're going to die. I know that seems like a stupid thing to worry about, but I feel I'm like ridden with guilt. I am guilt ridden. I feel awful about it. And I still love them. So I have no conclusion. ChatGPT told me that I need to wean them off, and ChatGPT gave me a very comprehensive 3 week to 4 week wean off plan where I start feeding them slightly less every day, and then it goes to like every other day, and the water a little bit less, maybe like wait a day to fill it up, and they'll start hopefully seeking uh, food and water elsewhere. Another reason to not have them is because I also learned that like if I just completely stop feeding them, they may try to come in the house, which they may already be doing. Like once summer hits and it's 1 billion degrees here, they may try to get into the vents, to the pipes, to the whatever. I just got a solar light to put under my car because I did know that pack rats tend to burrow in engines. Uh, I think somebody left a comment on the Instagram video saying that like that happened to him or his wife and it was $3,000 worth of damage. That happened to me like 20 years ago when we first moved here. I wasn't feeding rats. There were no Melvins that were like my friends. But yeah, I don't want them to be trying to get in the house. I don't want them to ruin my car. And again, I feel like an asshole because they're only here. Well, they were already here, but they're sticking around because I've made it so damn comfortable for them. And now they're dependent on me. I feel like they even like recognize my voice when I come outside. I swear. Rats are smart. I had a pet rat, Albert, many years ago. Anyways, it is weighing heavy on my heart. And I know that there are plenty of listeners who are probably like, shut the fuck up. They're rats. They're wild rats. Who cares? And I get it. I totally get it. I wish that I could have that same mentality. I wish that I felt that way. Unfortunately, I do not. And, I saw like a dead snake when I was walking Jinx the other day and I didn't cry, but I came close. It just broke my heart. It just breaks my heart. I just, you know, uh, you already know. If you've been listening for a while, you already know. If you're new, I have an obsessively, annoyingly bleeding heart for animals, all creatures, way more than people. Mark and I had a big conversation the other night about hunting, which was not my choice. I didn't bring that up, if you could guess. Uh, and I was like, oh, I'd have a way easier time shooting a person than an animal, especially if the person was trying to cause me harm. I guess if the animal was trying to cause me harm, I would shoot it. Anyways, this is going down a road that has nothing to do with true crime, so I will stop. But you know, if anyone has any brilliant ideas beyond just weaning them off food and water, please let me know. I did see something online that said like you could do uh, non-harmful traps, like catch them in, I don't know what, you put cheese in the back of a box and they go in and the box closes. And oh my God, it just reminded me of when Mark had a mouse in his house and I didn't tell him about it because I didn't want him to kill it. I definitely told that story on here. Um, but then like, where do I take them out into the middle of the desert where there's no food and water? I don't know. So if anybody has any brilliant ideas that do not cause the Melvins any harm, please let me know. Uh, I thought I wanted advice on something else, and you guys are such a resourceful group here, but I can't remember. So we will move on. We will move right on to true crime. I'm going to make a note so I can put it in the show notes. 15 minutes intro. Okay. So thank you for listening to my story about the Melvins and for putting up with my annoying animal nonsense. I feel like this is one story. All right, I'm going to tell that. This story has been like in the news as recently. Um, I had never heard of it though. So let's jump into it. So, this is the true disturbing story of the 2016 Fullerton triple homicide. Now, 2016 obviously is a while ago, but there was some advances recently in this case which brought it back into the headlines. So, this is a story that begins innocently enough in the depths of online chat rooms and spirals tragically into real life horror. September 24th, 2016. It's a quiet Saturday morning in Fullerton, California. The peaceful suburban streets offer no hint of the terror about to unfold. Then a chilling 911 call pierces the calm. A young girl calls and says, Mom and Dad and Billy died. She told the dispatcher at 911 she wanted the police to take her and her 9-year-old sister away because they were frightened. Police immediately rush to the scene and they step into a nightmare. Inside, they discover Jennifer Goodwill Yost, 39 years old. She is dead in her bedroom. Christopher Yost, her husband, was found shot in the backyard, indicating he was trying to run away. So he was shot in the back, running away from whatever horrors were happening. And Arthur Buddy Boucher, not sure, 28 years old. This was a family friend who was sleeping over so that he would be closer to the home where he was going to have a visitation with his son the next day. Talk about bad timing. He had been sleeping on the couch and that's where he was found murdered. All three had been shot execution style. Shockingly, upstairs, the two youngest daughters, 6 years old and 9 years old, were unharmed. I mean, probably emotionally scarred for a very long time, but unharmed. But there was a person that was missing, and that was the 17-year-old daughter, Caitlin Goodwill Yost. So, of course, the million-dollar question is, where is she? And is she safe, or did she do this? So, investigators start looking into it, and they quickly discover that Caitlin was really heavily involved in the online furry community. So I'm assuming most people know what this means, but I will explain a little bit. So furry community, I thought this was just only a sexual thing. Apparently it's not. It can be, but it's not only a sexual thing. But basically, members of this furry community adopt animal personas. They wear costumes and take on alternate identities. Um, like they, you know, that's basically it. I'm not going to explain it more. The weird thing is that it wasn't just Caitlin who was part of this group. It was also her mom, Jennifer, who was part of this furry group. And now, again, I thought it was only sexual, like people dress up as animals and have sex with each other. But apparently people just like to take on the persona of an animal. And if there's anyone listening who does this, like I'm not kink shaming, that's fine. I don't understand it, but I don't understand a lot of things in this world. So who cares? Uh, I really don't understand. It just seems weird to me that a 17-year-old and her mom were both part of this like online furry community. But they were. In this online furry community, Caitlin, again, 17, she met Frank Felix, who is a 25-year-old at the time, who went by the names Wolfie or Coyote were his animal names. I do realize I just said I'm not judging, and my face and voice is filled with judgment. So I apologize. Uh, so not only is it a kind of interesting or different place to meet somebody, but 17 and 25, I don't know. It's not a huge age gap, I guess, 8 years, but 17, she's not even technically an adult yet. So kind of raises some red flags. And Caitlin's parents definitely thought it raised red flags. They strongly disapproved of this relationship, which meant that Caitlin began to interact and see Frank in secrecy. And it kind of became isolating for her. And she became desperate to find a solution to be able to more freely see Frank. And that's where we meet Joshua Acosta, a 21-year-old U.S. Army private stationed at Fort Irwin. He was also part of the furry community. He was known online as Ace Fox. He was also known as this is so beyond my understanding, a brawny, which is what they call people who are fans of the My Little Pony cartoons for children. And again, I'm dripping with judgment in my voice. I realize that, but it's really hard for me to get my head around this not being a sexual thing that is just feels off to me. Like watching children's shows, it goes, and it does not have to be. I shouldn't say this. It feels adjacent to some not kosher behavior. But that is just what my brain is doing. So maybe I'm the one who's sick in the head. um, anyways, not the point. So the Army private Acosta, he becomes kind of like Caitlin's confidant, where she feels like she can confide in him about her parents and them not wanting her to see Frank. And she kind of starts to feel like this Joshua Acosta can help her escape what she's at the time considering a strict and oppressive household. Now, beyond this relationship, I don't know if it was a strict and oppressive household. I didn't get that sense, but this is also mini crime, so I did not spend as much time researching it. But I think that she felt it was strict and oppressive because she couldn't, she was 17, she couldn't see the guys she wanted to see. But what happened next goes a bit beyond teenage rebellion and moves into just straight horror. So on September 23rd, Caitlin slipped silently out of her home to go meet Felix, who was waiting outside for her. Meanwhile, Acosta had a shotgun that was provided by Felix. He crept to Caitlin's home, the Yost home, and with like chilling precision and accuracy and timing, he executed all three adults. Buddy never got up from the couch. Jennifer was killed in her bedroom, and Christopher was desperately trying to run after hearing the first two gunshots, but was shot in the yard. Brutal, swift, very calculated. But why? Why did this happen? Well, Caitlin allegedly confided in Joshua Acosta that she had been and was being abused by her stepfather, Christopher Yost. This is a claim that has been strongly disputed and never proven. But Acosta is, he sees himself kind of as her savior. He's become her confidant, so now he's going to save her. Also, right after the shootings, Frank Felix sent messages to Caitlin declaring his love for her and his hopes that they could start a family and make Caitlin's sisters their own children. Oof. So many questions. Like, were these two men manipulated by Caitlin, or were they manipulating Caitlin? Like, did they just want to take advantage of Caitlin and kill her family? Like who's the mastermind here? Well, within hours, authorities arrested Joshua Acosta and Frank Felix. Caitlin was also initially detained, but she was later released without charges. At trial, Joshua Acosta showed complete detachment from this. He calmly relived and recounted the murders for the courtroom. Frank Felix, however, was desperately trying to kind of distance himself. He was, pretending to be ignorant about Acosta's intentions, like, oh, I didn't know anything about it. He also said that he was scared of Acosta. However, this was proven to be not really accurate because the two actually kept in touch and like wrote letters to each other. And Frank Felix sent letters to Acosta with one of the letters including a quote, drawing of a sexually androgynous anthropomorphic horse with human breasts. Again, it just feels off to me. And I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people in the furry community who are not off, who this is just like, this is just what they like. They like dressing up as furry animals, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. And, shit like this, a story like this kind of gives it a bad name. However, for these people, for these guys, I think it was not totally innocent and just like, oh, I loved My Little Pony as a kid and now I love dressing up like My Little Pony as an adult. I do, that obviously wasn't the case because they're murderers. So the jury felt the same way. They did not buy that Frank Felix was scared of Acosta or didn't know anything about this. Both were convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. In 2018, Joshua Acosta received life in prison without parole. And for some reason, Frank Felix's sentencing, it was a long, drawn-out process, but he finally faced the same fate this year, 2025. He also life in prison without parole. Caitlin is a big question mark. I actually did mean to look up where she is and what she's doing right now, but I didn't. So that'll be in the follow-up. She is, I can't believe nothing happened to her. To me, that feels crazy. Now, again, mini crime, so I don't have all the information. I didn't like deep dive this, but I wonder if, and maybe that's what we'll do on the follow-ups. I'll like a little bit deeper dive it and answer some of these questions. But I wonder if, did Acosta and Felix like protect her in court? Like say, oh, she had nothing to do with this. It was all us. Because if they didn't do that, then how is she not being held accountable for some part of this? It kind of blows my mind. And how must she be doing? And what happened to those girls, the little girls? Are they with her? I hope not. I don't know her, but I feel like that might not be a good plan. So this is definitely a story that is a stark reminder of the blurred lines between fantasy and reality and leaves us possibly with some pretty creepy questions like how well do we truly know those closest to us? Because I'm guessing Caitlin's parents didn't think she was going to have them murdered. And where exactly does fantasy or online fantasy end and reality begin? I'm debating if I should do all 3 of these or just do them into separate episodes. Let's keep going. This next one is crazy. The Mortuary of Horrors is what this next one is called. So, and this one actually takes place in Texas, so we could get a little bit deeper into it at some point. But what happens when the person you trust to care for the dead decides to turn their bodies into a science project? That's exactly what police in Austin, Texas were forced to confront in early 2024 when a licensed mortuary owner, someone who should have provided dignity to the deceased, was caught conducting unauthorized experiments on human remains. This story is not just gruesome, it is like right out of a horror movie. And the woman at the center of this disturbing case is 51-year-old Adeline. We're going to call her Adeline. No, Bowie, I think, but I don't know. She's the owner and operator. Well, she was the owner and operator of Capital Mortuary Services, a facility tucked away in East Austin. On the outside, Capital Mortuary looks like any other small kind of funeral home provider. But behind closed doors, Adeline was running something, and it could be Adeline. I'm sorry, I don't know. Adeline. Shit. Adeline. It's going to go however it comes out of my mouth is how I'm going to say it. But behind closed doors, she was running something much darker. Authorities say that she was using corpses for personal experiments, injecting chemicals, dismembering remains, and documenting everything like it was some type of twisted research project. And she even had a name for it. She called it the Freedom Art Experiment, which after I tell you more about it, It does not make sense to me. So I'd love to know if it makes sense to you. Freedom art experiment. So we're talking about like real human bodies, people who had families, loved ones, final wishes for their loved ones. And this woman is treating them like test subjects in a DIY science lab. Ooh. And if you've ever lost someone and had to deal with a funeral director, a mortuary, all of those things, it is a obviously terrible experience and devastating. And I would usually say nothing could make it more devastating, but I guess this could if this happened to your loved one. So the investigation began in early March 2024 after Austin police received a tip that something wasn't right at the funeral home. A former employee had come forward with some concerns about the odd chemical smells, some very disturbing photographs that were found, and conversations that felt off to them. When investigators arrived to search the facility, what they found was definitely worse than what they expected. Inside the prep room, there were severed human limbs, specifically arms, suspended in various stages of decomposition. There were tons of tools stained with blood, jars containing unknown fluids, and a freezer containing what appeared to be human remains. Not intact, though, different parts of human remains. One officer reportedly described the scene as something out of Frankenstein's lab. According to the arrest affidavit, Adeline admitted to police that she had been injecting formaldehyde into body parts to study how they would decompose over time. She told officers she was interested in the chemistry of decay and had been documenting it for artistic and scientific purposes. She also confirmed that she had directed her employees to conduct experiments on bodies to study the effects of embalming fluid with and without formaldehyde, which included cutting heads, arms, and spines from the remains sent to the facility. This is obviously the worst part of what she did, but she was also forging state paperwork. She was tampering with death certificates, and she was lying to families about where their loved ones' remains were being stored and how they were being handled. There were multiple families that were involved with this unknowingly. They believed that their loved one was there in the back being, cremated or embalmed respectfully. And instead their loved ones were being dissected like a sixth grade science class without consent. It's devastating. Again, I think back to my mom when my mom died, and like Jenna and I had to go, to the funeral home, and like it sorry, my brain like freezes because I can picture it so clearly that even talking about it, it's like I'm transported back there. So I had like a little brain freeze there. It's just unimaginable that this could happen. You're trusting someone to care for your mother, your father, your spouse, your child, and they become part of this like bizarre side project, like literal experiment. So Adeline was arrested and charged with abuse of a corpse, tampering with government documents, and operating a funeral establishment without proper licensing. But the most disturbing charge or fact, is that she had done this to at least 15 different humans, spanning multiple months. In one case, she allegedly kept an arm for weeks and weeks, injecting it with various solutions and photographing the results. In another case, she mislabeled a body as cremated and stored it in a refrigeration unit alongside chemicals and biological waste. She documented her activities in journals and photos, many of which police recovered from her home. And it wasn't even, I know that proper licensing was one of the charges, and there was some questioning with some of the licensing, but she was a licensed funeral director approved by the Texas Funeral Service Commission. Like, she was not just someone who, kind of started this like black off. I don't know what that means. This like off-label company and like made fake licenses. She had the license. She this was something that she was licensed to do. So, like, how did no one catch this sooner? Obviously, her license has been suspended, but the community is horrified, rightfully so. Families are devastated. And now the state is combing through every permit, signature, and body that has passed through her doors because they know of 15 for sure that have been like within recent times, but she's been doing this for a long time. So who knows what the past involves? One resident whose mother was cremated at Capitol Mortuary told the press, I thought she was in good hands. Now I can't stop picturing her body cut up like that. It makes me sick. As of now, investigators are still working to identify all the victims involved. She has not yet entered a plea in the case, but if convicted, she could face, many years behind bars and she'll never be able to run a funeral home again. I found a statement from her lawyer recently that it was a hard eye roll for me when I read this. Quote, our criminal justice system is based on the presumption of innocence and a careful critical evaluation of the evidence, facts, and their sources. This case involves complexities that are not immediately apparent and should not be sensationalized. Our legal team remains fully committed to defending and advocating for our client with the expectation of fairness and due process. Okay. So the story is, less about murder or breaking the law, but it's definitely about betrayal of trust because when we or our loved ones die, I think it's kind of assumed that they will be treated with dignity and be able to be, buried, whatever the case may be in peace. And Adeline shattered that trust for a lot of families and turned a place of mourning into a place of horror. So we will follow up on that one and see what her plea is and what she ends up getting sentenced with. And our third and final true crime headline is about a holiday trip that turned into a nightmare, which seems all too common. There are so many of these. It would, if I didn't love traveling, it would make me never want to travel. But, well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say, but I think if you're aware of your surroundings and take safety precautions, don't go out walking at night alone in a foreign place or things like that, you'll be okay. But that sounds a lot like victim blaming. So I'm going to retract that statement and say that bad shit happens everywhere. I know I'm real ray of sunshine today. Okay, a scenic island, a carefree trip, and a teenager who vanished without a trace. This is the story of Jay Slater, a 19-year-old British tourist who traveled to Spain for a music festival and was never seen again. This case is filled with red flags, eerie details, and an international manhunt that left a lot of questions. In June 2024, Jay Slater was just like any other teenager enjoying a summer escape. He was an apprentice bricklayer from Ostwald-Twistle, Lancashire, and had flown to Tenerife, one of Spain's Canary Islands, with friends to attend the popular New Rave Generation 3-day music festival. Hold on, guys. I have to take a sip of water. I'm sorry. I don't want to swallow into the microphone. Excuse me. He was young, he was excited, he was ready to have a great time. Friends described him as fun-loving, energetic, and impulsive, the kind of guy who would always say yes to an adventure. No one, however, expected that an adventure would turn into a horror story. I feel like I've said horror story a lot in this episode, but go with it. After partying on the night of June 16th, Jay left the festival with two men that he had just met. Instead of returning to his hotel in Playa de las Americas, he ended up spending the night at an Airbnb in a remote mountainous village called Masca, nearly an hour away from the tourist area where he had been. The next morning, on June 17th at 8:50 a.m., Jay called his friend Lucy Law and sounded panicked. He told her he had missed the bus that he was supposed to take to get back to where he was staying, and he was going to attempt to walk from Mosca to South Tenerife. That's about 28 miles. Okay. So now he's telling his friend Lucy, I'm lost though. I was going to walk, but now I'm lost in the mountains. My phone is dying. I don't know how to get back. I only have 1% battery on my phone. I have no water, and I cut my leg on a cactus, and I still have a really, really long way to go. And this journey was not a easy journey. Now, I'm assuming there's a road because he got in a car and went with these two dudes here. They drove there. They didn't like, you know, parachute in. So I'm confused as to why he didn't just walk down the road because really the 28 miles, the space between Mosca and Tenerife is it's rugged, it's isolated, and it was very hot there at the time. So it's not an easy place to, that's not an easy journey to make on foot. Again, there must have been a road. I'm not sure. He must have gotten turned around. Maybe he thought there was a shorter way if you just cut through the wilderness. That's never a good idea, guys. We definitely know that now from many stories that we've had. So he's telling his friend Lucy, I have 1%, I cut my leg, I have no water, and I have so much further to go, and I don't know where I am. And then beep, his phone went dead. And he was never heard from again. The search began immediately. Now, when I say immediately, I read somewhere, so he called her at 8:50. They talked for like a minute, and then the phone went dead. And I read that the search began at 9:04. So 14 minutes later, that seems like that's impossible and very unlikely, but it did begin very quickly. And it was massive. Spanish authorities launched a full scale operation involving helicopters, drones, search dogs, and mountain rescue teams. They combed the remote terrain of Ravello Alto and Los Carrizales for days. Many volunteers joined the efforts. Jay's mom and family flew in from the UK. But as the days turned into weeks, nothing was found. They even had specialist dogs that they drafted in from Madrid. They found these dogs could find no trace of Jay. No sign of him, no trace of him, no clothing, no phone, not even a footprint. It was like he vanished into thin air. And then came the theories. Some people believe that Jay had fallen. He had slipped on the steep cliffs because I guess this is the little town of Mosca is like located way up in the mountains. And so they thought maybe he fell. Others thought he had been abducted or killed by the men that he left the music festival with. But Spanish police talked to them pretty quickly. Both were cooperative and both were cleared of any suspicion. Internet sleuths went wild, suggesting everything from drug trafficking to some type of cover up involving the local authorities. One theory claimed that Jay was fleeing someone he owed money to. Another claimed his phone's last ping showed him moving erratically as if he wasn't alone and someone was like forcing him to move around weirdly. It became a media circus. Tabloids, TikTokers, and amateur investigators flooded Tenerife. I also don't know if I'm saying that correctly. They were filming themselves in the same spots that Jay had last been seen. Some even confronted the locals. It got crazy. It got so bad that Spanish authorities had to ask people to stop interfering with the search. And they actually said, we're going to call off the search on, I believe, June 30th. They didn't actually call off the search, but they just said that so that like people would stop searching and they could search, like the proper people could be searching. There were still no answers though. Jay's family was kind of critical of the search. They said local police didn't treat it seriously enough at first, and they waited too long to call in the mountain specialists and didn't follow up on tips fast enough. I find that hard to believe because this happened quickly. Like they were searching quickly. Maybe they didn't bring in the like specialty dogs from Madrid or whatever right away, but it seemed like this happened pretty quickly. So Jay's mother told the UK media, I just want my son back. I don't care what happened. I just want him home. Her heartbreak has been shared by thousands who continued to follow the case with hashtags like Find J Slater and sharing any possible clues. But then, after nearly a month of searching, a breakthrough. On July 15th, 2024, Spanish police discovered human remains in the Juan Lopez ravine, a remote and treacherous area near Jay's last known location. His possessions and clothing were found nearby. The body was later confirmed to be Jay through fingerprint analysis, and a post mortem examination concluded that Jay died from traumatic head injuries consistent with a fall from a tall height. They believe that his death was instantaneous. His body was repatriated to the UK, and his funeral was held on August 10th, 2024, in Lancashire. Mourners were asked to wear blue, which was his favorite color, and donations were directed to LBT Global, a charity that supports families of missing persons abroad. While the discovery brought some closure, I mean, I feel like that's a lot of closure, more than some, a good amount of closure, there were still questions. Why did he attempt to make this journey? Why didn't he just wait for the next bus? Or why didn't he ask the guys that he was with to drive him back down or hitchhike or. And if the search started so quickly, well, he could have fallen right away. He could have gotten off the phone with Lucy and fallen. And I guess then there's that. But if the search had started quickly, why couldn't they find him? Like it wasn't, yes, it was treacherous terrain, but well, I guess in my head, you guys know that I'm terrible with distances and maps in general. So 28 miles, yeah, I guess that's a very large area. So maybe it does. Maybe it is. It does make sense. Like he had a problem with those guys. He wanted to get back to his friends, to his hotel. He thought I'll just hoof it, which is something that I do. Well, I used to do. That was like one of my, those TikToks or something. So it was like, what's your toxic trait? I have plenty, but one of them used to be, I don't do this anymore, when I would like go out and be drinking. If I got tired, if I got uncomfortable, if I was bored, if I just, got in a mood in my stupid drunk brain, I'd just be like, I'm leaving. But I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't tell anyone. I wouldn't let anyone know. I would just, Jackie used to call it phantoming. Margot phantomed again. I would just boop right out and walk back to wherever I was staying, which is super unsafe. And I definitely don't do that anymore. Uh, Anyways, so this story serves as a reminder of the dangers that can lurk in unfamiliar places. But I'd also like to say also familiar places. This could just as easily happen to me here in Arizona, and I live here. It's a familiar place. So maybe it's a good reminder to not try to walk home 28 miles in terrible terrain. Not victim blaming, just, he miscalculated how difficult it would be, which is very sad and tragic. I guess that's not really a crime story, though. There's no crime that was committed. Well, it was just an interesting story to me, so I shared it. And those are our 3 true crime headlines for this week. And I hope you enjoyed them. And I will be back next week with more. If you hadn't already recognized, like these stories are not necessary. Obviously, they're not always murder, and they're not necessarily like happening this week, because I feel like if I pick a story that's all over the news right now, then there's a good chance you guys have already heard it. So I'm trying to pick ones that are somewhat timely, like within the last year or two ish, or something has brought them back into the headlines. So I will say that I watched, I know this is shameful to admit, I didn't really follow the Gabby Petito case. I mean, it was impossible not to know a little bit about it just from it was everywhere. And I definitely have thoughts about that this woman's case was so, so heavily, overly publicized. And there are so many other people who go missing, who disappear, and no one looks for them. And we've never even heard of them in the news. And I'm not going to get into that because I know it's a whole big conversation and people get very sensitive about it. About like, does it have to do, is it because she's a white woman with like a white chick with blonde hair? And yeah, yes, a little bit. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but it's a contributing factor. Anyways, I said I'm not going to go there, so let's move on from that. I didn't really know much about it. I knew a girl and her boyfriend, or something. She had disappeared. That's all I really knew. And for some reason, last night I just put on the new Gabby Petito documentary on Netflix. It's somewhat new, and I thought, I'll just put this on while I cook some food. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to cook food. I need to watch this. Like I was immediately drawn in. It's a very well done documentary. I actually saw something on TikTok a couple weeks ago, or I don't know, not too long ago. Um, all these women posting the FBI detective in this documentary. She's a woman who's never speaks about her sexuality, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that she's gay. Um, and she's beautiful and like very attractive, but also like very manly. I've seen a lot of women posting on TikTok like a picture of like I just watched the Gabby Petito thing and like I'm packing up my bag to leave my husband because I'm gonna go find this woman. I can't remember the detective's name, but when I saw it, I was like, okay, I don't get it. I comprehend it. I was like, she's a lovely looking woman, but like I don't understand. But when you watch her in the documentary, she's like so knowledgeable and like so passionate and so smart that I get it now. I see. um, but in general, it was it was I mean heartbreaking. Her poor family and just the whole story was so tragic. In case there happens to be anyone out there who also doesn't know what happens at the end, I won't ruin it because I did not know what happened. And wow, what a fucking annoying ending. Like just terrible. Actually, you know what? If you don't know about it by now, I'm sorry. I have to say, like, good that they got some closure, that the family got some closure, that Gabby was found. Terrible that the boyfriend killed himself without, I know he wrote that like bullshit letter, like, oh, we were crossing the river and I heard a splash and I turned around and like Gabby was cold. Like, what? It doesn't even make sense. The only thing I thought, and like if I was her family, this is what I would want to believe, is that they were walking across the river. She fell and hit her head, and and it was too serious of an injury. She was going to suffer and die. And like he said in his letter, he thought he was being what was the word? Merciful. But unfortunately, the ME said that she died from strangulation, not from the trauma to her head, which I guess still fits that story. Like he thought she was going to die. There was something that the ME said that made it like, no, that's not what happened. Uh, Either way, I don't think that's what happened. I think what I think many people think that he killed her and not to be merciful. That he probably got mad at her and hit her in the head with something and then realized that he hit her too hard. I don't know, actually. I don't know enough about it. I just watched it last night. I don't know why I'm like having opinions about this. It's not like something that I've been following forever. I thought it was really well done, very interesting, very sad. So sad for those families. But I was so impressed with both sets of parents, Gabby's parents. Her parents got divorced and then each of them got remarried. And both couples seemed so lovely. The fact that they like got along and were able to mourn Gabby all together and like just gosh, what an ideal if you have to get divorced and have children to be able to handle it like that and kind of have this like giant blended family is of course I don't, who knows. this is when they're on TV. I don't know what's happening at home, but from what I could, from what they portray, wow, really impressive. Seemed like such lovely people, and Gabby seemed very sweet and likable. And honestly, her boyfriend seemed sad. He seemed troubled and depressed, and that's unfortunate. Um, yeah, very, very tragic. Everybody's like, geez, Margot, we've already known this for years. Fascinating to me though. So if you haven't watched it, I have so many recommendations to watch. Maybe I'll do an episode, but just real quick, and I'll do an episode and talk more about them. But the new season of You on Netflix. If you have not watched this series, I mean, I loved it. I read the book, I don't know, 15 years ago. My mom was still alive. Because I was visiting here. She was alive. So it was a long time ago, 10 to 15 years ago. I thought it was the weirdest book. I don't even remember how I came across it. I think I found it at a house where I was babysitting. I took it maybe. I don't know. But I liked it. It was just really strange, the perspective that it's written from, because you really never get to know the narrator. I don't know why I just said that like that, but it was weird. And then I never thought about it again until this show came out. And I didn't even make the connection with the title. The title is You. And I didn't even make that connection until I started watching it. And it was the same kind of like weird narration. And I don't know how to classify it, just weird. And I was like, oh my God, this is the book. And so they did 5 seasons. This season, I believe, is the last. I did not like the fourth season, maybe, but other than that, I loved it. I thought it was really good. Watch that. I was not going to watch something called Ransom Canyon on Netflix. I don't watch a lot of Netflix until now, apparently. Josh Duhamel, who is lovely. He was also on Daddy Issues, and not only is he lovely to look at, but he is lovely, you know, seemingly lovely personality, very polite and kind. Um, I was like, oh, it's just another Yellowstone. I didn't even finish Yellowstone. They shoot a horse in the first 5 minutes of Yellowstone. I was like, this show is going to be tough for me. Ransom Canyon, there is only one part, and it's not even that sad of an animal part. Like I was able to watch it. It's so soap opera-y. It's kind of silly. It definitely feels a little bit like a not stealing from Yellowstone. They're different, but same thing. Two ranch families in Texas who don't like each other and fighting over land. But I thought it was good. It's a little romance. There's a little bit too much romance in it for me, but I enjoyed it. And oh, I know there are so many other shows, but that's all I'll say for now. I am going to recommend, I'm going to keep recommending it because my friend made this show. It's called Motorheads. Comes out May 20th on Amazon Prime. And my very dear, amazing former colleague and friend, Jason from Cavalry, has been working on this show since I think I met him, honestly. Like, I think when I met him, they were just developing the script. And so every week on our like weekly meeting, he would talk about like the recent developments and like, and then they're looking for actors to attach to it. And like, so I got to, from the outside, kind of observe him making this show from like conception basically to actually want to say that Dana helped come up with it, my old boss. I don't want to put misinformation out there. Uh I'm not sure. But Jason was an EP on it, or more or higher than an EP. I don't know. He had a huge part in it. Last summer, he was in Vancouver for months and invited me to come and go to the set, like come to the set of Motorheads, like come stay with him, come to the set. Ryan Phillippe is in it, and a couple other people who I recognize, but I don't know their names. And of course I was like, I can't, I don't have any money. What an idiot I am. I should have like stolen the money. It's my dream to go on a movie or TV set. And I literally had an opportunity to, and I didn't do it. I'm so pissed at myself. But he sent me pictures from set and just it is really exciting to me. I understand that none of you know who he is, and so this is less exciting for you. But I'm gonna just talk about it because I've been waiting, I feel like years to see this show. And it is really fascinating to me. Again, from the outside, I had nothing to do with this, but to see this go from like the pilot script that had to be like rewritten and rewritten and rewritten to attaching actors to being sold to now being on TV. It's just such a huge accomplishment for him. And I'm so excited for him and I'm so excited to see it. And I just can't wait. So, May 20th, Motorheads, Amazon Prime. And with that, I will say goodbye and thank you for listening. And I would still love to hear feedback if you like this format with the kind of 3 shorter stories. I will be following up on them, I promise. After like the 4th episode, I'll do a roundup and see which ones have updates, if any. And we'll do kind of like a recap update episode. Okay. I guess that's it. I'm going to go do a workout video. I'm going to stop talking. I was going to talk about a workout video I did the other day, but I'm sure you're sick of my voice by now. So I will stop talking and I will say thank you for listening. Stay safe out there. And I will be back on Tuesday with a new regular full on episode of True Crime. Okay. And please, 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 review on Apple, leave a comment on Spotify, all that stuff. Okay. Love you guys. Bye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.